President concerned over fraud and corruption case delays. Who is protecting corrupt public representatives? New Sri Lanka Army commander assumes duty. News Media Standards Act comes under fire.
If you want to know what's been happening here at home and around the world, well, you're watching the right channel. A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News live on Newsfirst. I'm Mahina Bongzo.
Good evening, I'm Shahin Jarampatha. Let's take a look at the stories in detail.
President Maithripala Sirisena says no one will be allowed to create confusion in the country.
As a government, we have ensured freedom and democracy in this country. We have established the freedom for the people to enjoy their time in their homes. If you take a look at the media, they are extremely critical on the government. The media portrays the many issues in the government. The media portrays the issues in the country. It is the media that shows that there is no government in the country. It is the media that shows that the government would collapse tomorrow. The media is given such freedom because of the policies and the vision of this government. How many journalists were slain in this country before we were elected to power? How many media institutions in the country were set ablaze? How many journalists went missing in this country? How many journalists were forced to flee the country? We have changed the situation today and ensured media freedom and the protection of the journalists. We have ensured the protection of the physical resources of media institutions. This government has ensured all of that. But today, with that freedom, the media is portraying that there is a serious issue in the country. There is no issue or confusing situation in this country. We do not allow anyone to create confusion in this country. That needs to be made clear. It is our war heroes that gave the people hope of a better tomorrow. The war heroes laid down their lives to bring an end to brutal terrorism. Their families, parents, wives and children had little hope of a little house of their own. The government is committed to make that dream a reality. That is a national responsibility that we must all carry. I must make it clear to you that the government and the country would not allow the international community, international organizations or any other organization to interfere with the lives of our war veterans. The war veterans will not be subject to any form of hunt. The war veterans who are victorious in the conflict will not be sacrificed. They will not be betrayed. If someone makes such a statement, they are the people who made their way to Temple Trees and the Presidential Palace at the expense of the war veterans.
The event was held to present title deeds to the families of fallen war heroes and injured veterans.
Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake, who was appointed as the 22nd commander of the Sri Lanka Army yesterday, assumed duties this morning.
The newly appointed Army commander was accorded a military guard of honor upon his arrival to the Sri Lanka Army headquarters. Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake assumed duties following well wishes from senior officials. A student of Ananda College, Colombo, Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake enlisted to the Sri Lanka Army as an officer cadet in 1981. Senanayake, who was a founding member of the Sri Lanka Army Special Forces Regiment in 1989, pioneered the concept of long-range reconnaissance patrols. Lieutenant General Senanayake, who has contributed an immeasurable service to his country in various military positions during the 30-year-long civil conflict, served as Director Plans of the Sri Lanka Army during the final phase of the humanitarian operations. He was appointed as Commander of the Security Forces in Jaffna on the 28th of January 2016 and in March last year was appointed as Chief of Staff of the Sri Lanka Army. In recognition of his gallantry and his bravery in the face of the enemy during the operations, Lieutenant General Senanayake was awarded the Rana Vikrama Padakkama, Rana Sura Padakkama on multiple occasions and the Uttama Seva Padakkama for his unblemished services in the army. His Excellency the President placed his trust in me and appointed me to this position.
As an
officer who has been on the battlefield, I know that not a single army officer would contribute to such acts. Soldiers are under oath two laws in the country, both the Penal Code and the Army Act. So we have no room to commit any crime. If any soldier is involved in any such crime, the Sri Lanka Army will take disciplinary action against them.
ඉඩම් ආපසු ලබා දීම සම්බන්ධව ඔහුගේ කාලේ විශාල ආందోලනයක් ඇති වුණා. විපක්ෂය කියනවා උතුරේ යාතික ආරක්ෂාට හානිදායක ලෙස දෙනවා කියලා. විග්නේශ්වර මහත්මයා ඇවිල්ලා හමුදා උතුරෙන් එලවන්න යන දිනේ ළඟයි කියලා කියනවා.
මරමස්ථාන අත්‍යවශ්‍යම කඳවුරු හැර ඉතුරු භූමිය.
Apart from the essential camps, we are gradually releasing the other lands. But there is no threat to national security. He has his own political views for his own political motives. As an army, we should not worry and will not worry about the statements he makes. There is no reason for another war. In the event there is a short-term issue, the Sri Lanka army is ready to take the required measures to tackle it. Politics is irrelevant to the Sri Lanka army.
I was never a political victim. I was never a political victim. I consider myself as a victim of circumstances. I am a victim of circumstances.
Honestly, there has been no such report and there doesn't seem to be such a threat. We have to go in for something called a capacity-based army. The threat constantly evolves. Now one person asks me about an ISIS threat, then another asks me about crew and another about floods. These are all tragedies to the country. These are also threats. We will see what should be done on the part of the army by liaising with legal experts. We have to do this because it is something the country needs. If we are to save the country, we have to better ourselves.
එතකොට මේ පරීක්ෂණ වලට හමුදාව සහාය දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන චෝදනාව එල්ල වෙනවා.
නීති විශාරදීන් සමග හමුදාවේ ඉන්න අය සමහර අවස්ථාවල.
We will see what should be done on the part of the army by liaising with legal experts. We have to do this because it is something the country needs. If we are to save the country, we have to better ourselves.
අපි හැදෙන්න වෙනවා.
රිමාන්ඩ් බන්ධනාගාරගත වෙලා ඉන්නේ ඒ අයගේ වැඩක් කරන්න කියලා නෙමෙයි. ඊයට පවරපු රාජකාරියක් කරනවා. එතකොට ඒක ඔබතුමා දකින්නේ කොයි ආකාරයකටද?
උදේ ඉඳන් හවස වෙනකන් අපි කරන්නේ අනුගේ වැඩක්.
It is other people's work that we do from dawn to dusk. I am not yielding my own crop. If the person who issued the order gave a wrong order and that order has been followed wrong, then in my view, the person who gave the order must be held accountable. Right now, investigating those people is not my duty. There is an investigation underway in the country. It is the skill of the person conducting this investigation to find the person who gave that order.
Journalists questioned the core cabinet spokesperson today on the views expressed by the president at the cabinet meeting on the closure of the anti-corruption committee secretariat.
Yesterday, a majority were of the view that there is no use of the anti-corruption committee secretariat. Even the Prime Minister said he isn't satisfied with it. This cabinet paper wasn't brought forward for his need. It was to decide on what to do with the secretariat. At that instance, I pointed out that there are just 6 investigators here and 1 consultant investigator. There are 5 other directors. So I asked, what are they doing? It wouldn't have mattered if it was just investigators. They would investigate matters. But additional money is being spent for other people. The expense for this month alone was over 12 million rupees. Then the president pointed out that what the secretariat has done is file a case over an incident where Minister Fauzi allegedly took a car from one ministry to another. Another case is pertaining to an incident where Priyanka Rajaratne has granted his daughter an appointment. So the president asked, if this is what we spoke about, are these the issues? He asked if this is what this institution, which was established to look into the millions and trillions stolen and the murders committed by the former rulers, is investigating. He asked if only 76 cases have been completed. Charges have been filed against various MPs, Pradesh Sabha members and provincial councillors. What is the meaning of this? This is not what our government promised. We promised to investigate large-scale fraud and corruption. This is how the president expressed his displeasure over the investigations being carried out. Many of the ministers seconded the president's opinion.
ප්‍රකාශ කරා ඒ වගේම බොහෝ ඇමතිවරු ඒ මතය අනුමත කරමින් කතා කරා.
මේ වෙන විට ඒ සඳහා කරපු ගෙවි මහ ජනතාවගේ බදු මුදල් ඒවට වට කියන්නේ කවුද?
තීන්දුවක් ගත්තේ නැහැ.
There was no decision on it as yet. The decision was to conduct a complete investigation and present a report at the next cabinet meeting. The president said that if all investigative bodies like the police, CID and the FCID were given to him, he will make sure that all reports on the main frauds will be presented within 3 months.
වංචා පිළිබඳව වාර්තා ටික මම ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා කිව්වා. හා?
Well, you don't need that coming out of my mouth, do you? Which is why I have a brain over my mouth. I instantly told him to take them over. If results are shown in 3 months or even 6 months, it will be done and dusted. All these rallies and picketings on the street are coming along one line of thread. If those who ruined this country and murdered people are publicized, issues will be resolved. We know all of this.
Corruption and investigations were extensively debated in Parliament today.
Hasn't the President said that the current minister who is in charge of the Attorney General's department and the minister in charge of the police are obstructing the activities? If they have any respect towards the President, those ministers must hand over those powers to the President. The President himself had pointed out that the respective institutions are weak. Not only are you protecting the corrupt, your way of governance is also corrupt. We can name with responsibility the frontline ministers who were linked to corruption. Ranjan Ramanayake is asking me for names. I will tell you. Look at the projects under the Ministry of Road Development. Aren't you able to see that? I say, question about Ravi Karanayaka's Prado deal. Ranjan Ramanayake is asking me for names. Look into the distribution of cows under the Ministry of Livestock. I don't know how you people are seated here. Keep in mind about associating with thieves and protecting them. I am saying these things in response to Ranjan Ramanayaka's inquiry. Similarly, who is behind the Treasury bond scam and who was protecting those people? It's the Prime Minister. Who else? Honourable Speaker, this government has not only failed to punish the corrupt, but has also become a government full of corrupt individuals.
Basil Rajapaksa fled on the 10th or the 11th after this government came into power. The whole island, including the joint opposition, said this thief ran away. Even Vimal Veeravansa said that Basil was a thief. Majority of the country knows that Basil Rajapaksa is linked to the property in Malvana and the Kheel land in Matara. But when Basil Rajapaksa landed in Katunayaka, our people went and welcomed him, saying Jayaveva. That means majority in this country likes thieves and they vote for thieves. The majority of citizens in Sri Lanka are in love with thieves.
Did the Employees Provident Fund suffer the outcome of pumping and dumping in the Treasury bond market? Newsfirst Zulfiq Farzan reports.
The Commission informed the witness, Richard Benedict Dias, that if anyone tries to interfere with his evidence or his ability to give evidence before the Commission, he must inform the Commission immediately. Justice Prasanna Jayawardena said that the Commission will deal with those who try to interfere with the evidence, as the Commission has the power to do so. Deputy General Manager of Treasuries at Pan Asia Banking Corporation, Richard Aruna Benedict Dias, provided evidence today. He testified that Pan Asia Banking Corporation purchased bonds in the auctions and markets at the request of Perpetual Treasuries Limited. Providing details on a series of transactions, the witness said Kasun Palisena of Perpetual Treasuries Limited had called PABC, informing them that the Employees Provident Fund was ready to sell their securities at a particular rate. He said PABC was used as an intermediary because both the EPF and PTL could not trade with each other due to trading restrictions on counterparties. After PTL informs PABC of the requirement, PABC verifies the trade with the EPF. Every time it was with an individual, Saman Kumara, who serves in the EPF department at the central bank. Thereafter, PABC made the purchase and sold to PTL at a marginal profit of 0.05%. The witness testified that PABC acted as an intermediary between the EPF and PTL upon the instructions given by former chairman of Pan Asia Banking Corporation, Nimal Pereira. This is incidentally the first time the evidence on Nimal Pereira came to light. Dias said he would not have entered into these deals if there was no such instruction given to the primary dealer unit of Pan Asia Banking Corporation. The witness noted that Wealth Trust Securities Limited and Perpetual Treasuries Limited had entered into a series of transactions to raise the rates of the bond being traded and thereafter unloaded them on the EPF, which then incurred a loss. The witness said that this can be called pumping and dumping. He further said the former chairman of PABC, Nimal Pereira, entered into bond trading on a personal level and through his private firm, NP Capital Limited, and sold bonds to the EPF. The witness said it is surprising that the EPF making purchases at high rates had gone unnoticed by its investment committee for a period of over 2 years. If he had done the same at PABC, he would have been held accountable. He testified that the former chairman at Pan Asia Banking Corporation, Nimal Pereira, had used PABC trading facilities for his deals in government securities. Pereira had left PABC in March this year. Richard Aruna Benedict Dias said he was not under duress to give evidence before the Commission. Justice Prasanna Jayawardena personally thanked the witness for being very frank in his evidence.
You're watching News First.
More headline-making stories coming to you on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the news. The death sentence was imposed today on the accused who was convicted of murdering journalist Mel Gunasekara.
Journalist Mel Gunasekara was murdered on the 2nd of February 2014 at her residence located in Subutipura in Batramulla. An individual who visited her residence to paint the house was accused of carrying out the murder. Police revealed that the suspect was a 39-year-old father of 3 and a resident of Dompe. The suspect confessed that he broke into Mel Gunasekara's residence as he was aware that the occupants leave for religious observances on Sunday mornings. In his confession, the suspect added that he committed the murder as he suspected that Mel Gunasekara recognized him when he entered the house through the back door. Concluding the case, Colombo High Court Judge Piyasena Ranasinghe imposed the death sentence and 30 years of imprisonment on the convict.
At the launch of a new branch of the Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka, Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, spoke of the need to build a new growth model for the economy, which is private sector driven, with exports and foreign direct investments as key pillars.
One can ask the question, why the private sector? If you look at our fiscal deficit and debt dynamics, clearly a state-driven development model is a non-starter. It's just not possible. We don't have the fiscal space to do it. If you take the various trade agreements that are being negotiated, if we are successful, one could say in maybe 12 months' time that Sri Lanka would be unique in that it would have preferential access to a market of over 3 billion people. The challenge for us now is execution. And when people ask me, what are the 3 priorities in my view? I keep saying it's execution, execution and execution.
Last night, we exposed that the Board of Investment signed a memorandum of understanding worth $2 billion for a project to build the tallest building in South Asia. Today, the Board of Investment responded to our expose.
When looking further into the details pertaining to the company that is carrying out the investment, a considerable number of people on its board are of Sri Lankan origin. A number of comments were made claiming that there is no land selected for the project as well as the flow of investments.
This investor is from which country?
Based in UAE. And also it's a sort of a conglomerate, and so they also they have
What's
a
the name of the
interest
company?
as well. The investing is TUE World Capital. TUE World Capital.
TUE World Capital.
Correct.
Okay. So that's not the original single company, but a consortium of companies.
Companies and individuals, from what we are made to understand.
Like, are there any Sri Lankan contacts or Sri Lankan?
There are Sri Lankan directors on this one. When they incorporate a company in Sri Lanka, they always put the Sri Lankan directors.
But one of these companies, is there a company called Al Aman Group associated?
They are connected with this, no?
That they are established in Sri Lanka to undertake this project. The agreement is signed in Sri Lanka. Al Aman World Capital Center.
Okay.
The Daily Mirror reported that the BOI signed a memorandum of understanding worth $2 billion for the project. Speaking to News First, a director of Al Aman Group, Dr. Senaka Silva, said the project is only $1.2 billion.
How much is the investment?
The investment would be $1.2 billion at the end of the project. However, the document shown to us by the chairman of the Board of Investment says the project is $2.4 billion. We questioned the chairman of the BOI on the proposed site of the project.
Then, මාස 3ක් ඇතුළත land එක site එක මෙයා කරලා ඉවරලා අපිට supplementary agreement එකක් අසම් කරන්න ඕන.
ඒ කියන්නේ මේ initial agreement එක sign කරුවා නම් මාස 3ක් ඇතුළත ඒගොල්ලෝ land එක පිළිබඳව
අපිට කියලා පටන් ගන්න ඕන වැඩ. ඒක මේකේ තියෙනවා.
Although the investment is in the billions, the agreement signed for foreign investment is only $200 million.
Before the end of 31st of December this year, you must bring $200 million into the country. If you don't bring that amount, this agreement stands terminated.
The chairman confirmed to News First that the BOI plans to bring the remaining funds in foreign investments and agreements are being drafted. They said the total investment is $2 billion or $2.4 billion US dollars.
After your that number, I spoke to that person. He says it's 1.2 billion.
Okay, 1.2.
It does not matter if it is 1.2 billion or 2.4 billion. That is not the issue. Given the situation, 1.2 billion is a positive sign. The agreement says 2.4 billion US dollars. These are foreign investments.
2.4 කියලා. ඔක්කොම සල්ලි හිට රටින් ගෙන්නනවා.
ඒක මේ agreement එක ලිඛිතව තියෙනවද?
They must bring the funds.
කෙලින්ම foreign
The first step is for 200 million US dollars.
200 has to be from
foreign overseas.
හරි. එතනින් එහාට එක ගැන තාම සඳහනක් නැහැ.
You cannot obtain that from Sri Lanka. Who is going to loan millions in Sri Lanka? Questions in this regard were also posed at the cabinet media briefing today.
කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය අනුමැතියක් ලැබිලා තියෙනවද ඩොලර් බිලියන් 2ක දැවැන්ත ව්‍යාපෘතියක් සඳහා ලංකාවේ ගොඩනැගිල්ලක් ඉදිකිරීමට?
මොකක්ද?
ඩොලර් බිලියන් 2ක ව්‍යාපෘතියක්.
ඩොලර් බිලියන?
කැබිනට් ඇප්‍රූවල් එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා මේ.
කෝකටද? නෑ තාම ඉතින් ඔය සාකච්ඡා කරලා එතනද ඊට පස්සේනේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට එන්නේ.
We are crossing over another short commercial break.
Stay with News First. We'll be right back. In your developing story tonight, the first discussion document of the Independent Council for News Media Standards Act purports to preserve the freedom of the news media and to maintain and improve the professional standards of news media in Sri Lanka. However, on inspection, there are clauses which will neither preserve nor improve the freedom and standards.
The council members will be appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Constitutional Council made up of 10 members, of which 7 are politicians. This leaves room for political influence in the makeup of the Council for the News Media Standards Act. There are a number of clauses which are a cause for concern. Section 36 outlines the duties and functions of the Council, which include enforcement of codes of practice which can be revised whenever the need arises, following public consultation held with various bodies having consultative status with the Council. The concern is the codes of practice will come after the Act is brought into effect. The content of the codes will be outside of the Act but have the powers of the Act. It is also subject to ongoing change. The Council will also have the power to conduct open public consultations at least once a year to assess public perception of the news media outlets' compliance with the codes of practice. Here there is a very real danger the public representatives can be manipulated, resulting in a survey which is heavily biased and upon which the Council may act. Consider again, the appointees to the Council have been made by politicians. News First welcomes the statement in Section 8, which states that no court may require a journalist to disclose their source of information. However, the powers of the Council, outlined in Section 37, require a journalist or news outlet to hand over documents. This will inevitably reveal otherwise anonymous sources. The consequences for investigative journalism will be devastating. This form of journalism is vital in a free, democratic society. News First has a proud history of exposing corruption at a very high level, which could not have been possible if the source knew any documentation given to News First would have to be revealed to this council. Such examples include the bond scam, currently the subject of a presidential commission of inquiry. It was News First that first brought this to the attention of the public 2 years ago, with information from 5 informants who remain anonymous. Similarly, the stock market pump and dump scandal in 2015 was exposed by News First with inside informants. The fraudulent award of contracts on parts of the outer circular highway was exposed through documentation provided by a whistleblower to News First, confident that their identity was protected. Freedom of the media in Sri Lanka is enshrined in the Constitution. There has been progress in the past 2 years. However, Reporters Without Borders still ranks Sri Lanka low in the World Press Freedom Index, placing the country in 141 position out of 180 countries. The protection of journalism is paramount in a democratic society. In addition, much is being said about the need to encourage foreign direct investment. To do so, a transparent government and economic policies free from corruption that can stand up to robust scrutiny has never been greater.
This matter was taken up at the Cabinet media briefing today.
When will the Independent Council for News Media Standards Act be brought before the Parliament?
This is still at discussion stage. It then needs to go into Cabinet. I was not aware of such an act until journalists started querying about it. Then we started inquiring about it from different places.
Even though the ministers are unaware, this has now been drafted. The Director General of Information, Dr. Ranga Kalansurya, is aware of this. The help of a company based in Denmark called International Media Support has been obtained. Why was the support of this company necessary?
This commenced in June. There is an election promise that a more independent mechanism than the Press Council Act will be introduced. In June, the Prime Minister advised us to commence the work. 8 media organizations joined us for the initial discussions. Chairman of Sri Lanka Working Journalists Association, Lasantha Rohunage, walked out because the other faction of the Free Media Movement was called for this meeting. The Tamil media organizations and Muslim organization also attended these discussions. It was decided to appoint a subcommittee to initiate work on the drafting of this act. Sita Ranjani from the Free Media Movement, Upali Arambavela, Dharamsiri Lanka Peli and M.N. Amin got involved in this subcommittee. The committee then decided that services of Vijayananda Jayavira, who has retired from the UNESCO, should be obtained. I did not decide this. It was the decision of the committee. The committee within 2 months convened 6 times at my office and they completed the draft. Minister Gayantha forwarded the draft made by this committee for the approval of the Cabinet in November last year. This was announced at the Cabinet meeting. The approval was to receive the opinion of the public. We received 125 responses. Journalists from your organization came to us confidentially. They met the minister and provided their opinion regarding this. They said they want to remain anonymous since they might have problems from the company. We compiled the second draft and we made a request from Dr. Pradeep Veerasinghe of the Organisation for National Media Development. We as a department do not have the required resources to take this around the country. He received aid from international support, the organisation you mentioned, to carry out this public consultation across the island. As part of that project, Toby Mendel arrived in the country last week. The government nor the department is involved in this arrangement.
ඒ ව්‍යාපෘතියේම කොටසක් විදිහට ටෝබි මෙන්ඩල් මහත්මයා ලංකාවට ආව ගිය සුමානේ. ඒකට රජය සම්බන්ධත් නැහැ, දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව සම්බන්ධත් නැහැ.
So there is a connection between you and Mr. Toby Mendel.
Oh, Mark.
Yes, that is where I worked before.
Why was Toby Mendel selected?
මේ තෝරගත්තේ. ඒක මම නෙමෙයි.
I did not select him. It wasn't me.
You have selected both Mr. Toby Mendel and Pradeep N. Veerasinghe for the drafting. On what basis were they selected?
පදනමක් නැහැ.
There was no basis. The draft was made by the subcommittee that I mentioned. The committee comprised of 5 Sri Lankans, including Vijayananda Jayavira. We can obtain the advice of any other specialist. We will accept what you have to say as well when it comes to enacting this or not. They did not draft this.
No. කෙටුමක් කළේ නැහැ කිසි කෙනෙක්.
දැන් එතුමා කියනවනම් සිරස මාධ්‍යජාලයට අයත් මාධ්‍යවේදියෙක් හෝ මාධ්‍යජාලයේ සමාජිකයෙක්.
If he is alleging that the Sirasa Media Organization had secretly entered a meeting concerning an action to be taken to corner the media, which is considered as the 4th government of the country, they must first check their heads.
අනිත් එක සිරස කියන්නේ
Also, Sirasa is not an organization that secretly gets involved in certain issues or does so in fear. Sirasa is a media organization that came forward to rid the country of fear and corruption. Therefore, no one is willing to believe that a member of Sirasa was involved as such because Sirasa is the people's channel. This is something that everybody knows. I see this as a baseless allegation.
ඒක හැමෝම දන්න දෙයක්. මේක මම නම් දකින්නේ පදන විරහිත ප්‍රකාශයක් විදිහට.
If we ponder for a while what is meant by giving information in secrecy, it means information exchanged in secrecy to do something covertly. This is not something like that. This is a grave intervention against the basic right of citizens or an operation to violate media freedom. It is very clear to us that this operation is being done by the government and the information department in secrecy. If this was debated publicly, it will become clear that they are trying to interfere against the basic rights of citizens. If he can say that our staff approached them and gave information in secrecy, we can counter-argue that his people came to us in secrecy and revealed that this process is being done to not only violate the rights of media, but also the rights of the entire citizenry. I think it is not appropriate for Dr. Ranga Kalansurya to initiate debates on issues like this with a joke. If we are to bring an act of this nature, it should be extensively and openly debated. We are also ready to come and discuss it, but it should never be a law that infringes upon our constitutional right of speech.
When the idea that the sources will have to be revealed goes into the public, no one will come forward to provide any information to the media, whatever the legality may be. The government can appoint any one of their allies and start suppressing the media the way they want. They came into power after talking about media suppression and murder of Lasantha Wickrematunge, Sivaram, the Eknaligoda case and journalists who were assaulted like myself. These cases are investigated based on our pressure, but we haven't seen an independent desire to investigate them. We know that there were attacks on media organizations in the past. Sirasa was bombed using a Claymore mine. There were other stations as well. We must question as to what they are trying to do without bringing those perpetrators before the law. This government has attempted at multiple times to regulate the media through various means. They tried to bring in amendments and the media organizations in the country together with other organizations protested against it. The government had to roll it back temporarily. A similar attempt is made again. The government is working on an act where the source can be revealed and one that has several suppressions against reporting.
According to the Director General of Government Information, it is Dr. Pradeep N. Veerasinghe that is spearheading this process in the drafting of this document. Dr. Ranga Kalansurya also accepted that Dr. Veerasinghe has received funds for this purpose. Dr. Pradeep Veerasinghe was suspended from the University of Colombo over an incident surrounding a student while he was serving as a senior lecturer there. An inquiry was also held into the incident. The Canadian national who is involved in this, Mr. Toby Mendel, is the president of the Centre for Law and Democracy, or CLD, a non-governmental organization. The main objective of this NGO is to promote democracy. Mendel has been having close ties with International Media Support, a company in which Dr. Kalansurya acts as a regional advisor. News First will continue to focus its attention on deals like this involving several NGOs.
Speaking at an event held in Colombo this morning, Acting High Commissioner of Pakistan to Sri Lanka, Dr. Sarfraz Ahmad Sipra, called for interfaith harmony among communities in Sri Lanka.
The event was held to relaunch the Pakistan Computer Centre of the All Ceylon YMMA conference.
I would like to mention that we have got some bitter experiences also. I am not talking about lack of confidence. It is just I am relating our own experience. What I propose is that let's have a short and a crisp MOU between three parties, between YMMA, Pakistan High Commission and the Friendship Association. They should work together and should monitor and evaluate that how the things are being utilized. There will be no discrimination. It will not be solely for the Muslims to the exclusion of the other communities. That is the real spirit actually what we want. Because if the peace and interfaith harmony is there, that is your best protection.
The project is a joint venture of the All Ceylon YMMA Conference and Sri Lanka-Pakistan Friendship, Trade and Investment Association.
And that is a wrap of Primetime News. Thank you very much for watching. I am Shahin Jurangpati.
And I'm Mahina Bongzo. Take care and good night.